Hello, I'm Carly Hammock, and I'm doing the second part of the Read Aloud assignment, Part B. And I read this to a small group in a kindergarten class. There was 5 students, and the title of the book is Robbie's Visit to the Doctor. I picked this book because we are amidst cold and flu season, and a lot of people are getting sick. I also picked this book because this is one of the biggest fears a lot of children have, is visiting the doctor. I also think that it's important that children understand the difference between why you go to the doctor. One reason might be because you're there for a routine checkup, which is highlighted in this book, or that you're there because you're actually sick, which is also highlighted in this book. It also highlights that it is very important, if you are given medicine, like antibiotics, if you're sick, to completely take all the full dosage, and that's something that not a lot of little kids learn, but was put in here. And this book was also written by James S. Todd, who is a doctor, and it's part of the American Medical Association. So it's dedicated to healthcare, but in a great simplistic version for children to understand. So number 2, describe the process in preparing for your read aloud. Specifically, how did you prepare? So one thing is, I did do this last week during my observation time because that was the best time I could fit into my schedule, since I also work for the school district. I think my biggest problem with the read aloud was the school district that I picked in particular, which is my home school district, was a little iffy on recording, so I wasn't allowed to record the children's responses, and when I was recording, the video was very close to me because the teacher was recording just myself, so it was kind of up front and personal because she was sitting at the table with it. That was their decision, and that was kind of like their way of saying, you know, yes, you can record this read aloud, but we also feel that it's in the best interest that we don't record any, like, responses and stuff like that, which I had to respect their decision because obviously I had to do my project. I think that was the hardest thing preparing for this. Other than that, I mean, I practiced the book reading. I practiced that. I mean, obviously, sometimes we make mistakes when we're talking too fast, so I made a little bit of mistakes when I was reviewing my recording. But other than that, I read this book to my fiance a few times, just out loud, to get a hang of it. And I also try to practice reading, which you can see that I'm doing during the read aloud, is just trying to read more with the book to the side. Hold on, like this, so that the children could see the pictures while I was reading. Definitely something to get used to, especially when you're reading to younger children, because you can't read like this because they want to know what's also going on the other side of the page. So that's definitely something that was harder and not something I'm used to, but it definitely was an experience in itself. Sorry, I had to move the camera back. Alright, 3, how do you feel before you started reading aloud, when you began reading, and while you were reading, and when were you done? And when you were done. So, before I started reading, I felt really confident. I think it was just breaking down the idea of the book, because to the children, of why we were reading something about visiting the doctor, being that it was cold and flu season, so it's important for them to understand, you know, you need to practice being healthy. When I began reading, I was very confident. I think I kind of expressed that more confident I became. I did emotion. I was like, ooh, the scary, nervous. Like, I just kind of tried to put a little bit more liveliness into it. A lot of times when I'm reading to children, besides this, I also like to, for example, if I was reading Goldilocks, I like to change my voices so that you get a little girl's voice, you get a little bear's voice, a big bear's voice. It just really helps, because then it keeps the children engaged. In this sense, I kind of did more of like the in fluctuations in my own voice as if I was Robbie or the doctor or the parents when responding to something that was happening. I also did a few tones, like noises that would go along with something in general. So like I did a ringing, or let's see, what else did I do? Like a beep beep sound, I believe I did. And it just kind of helps with the children, like, just not saying the word, but also giving that tone or the sound that that word makes, because it's like a phone ringing or something like that. I think children really like that, and it also helps connect the reading to them because they've obviously heard these noises. So definitely something I like to put into my reading, especially when you're reading to younger children. While I was reading, I mean, obviously I felt a little goofy because the children were pretty quiet per the district and the principal's instructions, because, and the teacher. So, I mean, that kind of lacked there, but I could see their faces. They were smiling. They were enjoying the book, and they definitely understood it. And then later on, off camera, when we were discussing it, they understood the ideas and the concepts, and especially the main concept of this whole book is going to the doctors when you are sick, but then also going to the doctors when you're not sick. So it really worked out well for me. When I was done with the reading, definitely was happy. Felt like I did pretty well reading it out loud. I mean, I did stumble a few times, and I definitely saw that in the video, but obviously the children didn't mind, and the show goes on when you're reading. But definitely have some pronunciations and stuff like that I think I could work on now looking back, because we are dealing with younger children who are learning new vocabulary words and stuff like that, so they're really looking forward to it. Forward to like listening to you say those words and stuff like that, so that they can get an idea about what they should also be saying. Number 4, what were the children's reactions to the books before, during, and after? I think it's a very scary topic, and from what I discussed with them off and on camera, well, off camera really, was that it was something that they were scared of, but I think after the book, they had a better understanding of what needed to be done when you go to the doctor, so I think that was awesome. But nothing really too shocking or frightening. They were definitely enjoying the book, and it's definitely a very mild way to introduce a doctor visit and make it less scary than what it could be. 5, share what you feel your strengths and challenges were through the read aloud experience. My strengths, I think, just being animated is just part of my strengths in general. I'm very animated when I'm teaching little children, because you need something to kind of grip their attention. You also have to be fast-paced with them sometimes, and then you also need to know when to slow it down. So I think that's something that is a strength and a weakness. I think my thing is I need to slow down a little bit when I'm reading. And check maybe for more understanding, definitely, or emphasize something that I'm reading. So instead of just reading the page, I should emphasize, hey, like, did you see that this Nurse Jackie, for example, Nurse Jackie's wearing her uniform. She has a folder. That's Robbie's folder. They keep a file about him. Like, just explaining maybe more the pictures and different vocabulary words, except like, especially like larger vocabulary words that maybe some of them haven't been introduced to. Like, example, while Robbie's at the doctor's, he's talking about pterodactyls, and pterodactyls are a type of dinosaur, which I know and most adults know what they are, but definitely maybe describing that more in depth, and maybe even bringing a picture or something of a pterodactyl, or even pointing it out here in the book. I mean, just a more in-depth conversation about some of the harder words and giving them more references. I think that's something that I need to work on. What would you do differently to improve your next read aloud? I just mentioned I would definitely maybe go through and highlight more of the harder words or something that I think the students may not know, to help them out a little bit more. Maybe bring in pictures of those things, like for example the pterodactyl, or maybe bring in a picture of a more in-depth like picture of a doctor's office now so they could see it, because I mean this book's great and stuff, but they don't really have like what an actual doctor's office might look like. So maybe a little bit more, or and I think definitely like stopping and being like, hey, like this is the doctor's medical license. It's framed on the wall because it shows that that doctor went to school to get her degree in medicine so she could become a doctor. I did during the read aloud, did kind of stop and be like, this is a tongue dispenser, this is a flashlight, but maybe a little bit more. And I think things like this is like something easy that I can obtain, that I probably have at my house right now, like a popsicle stick and a flashlight, and maybe bringing something like that into the classroom would be helpful. I also might choose a different school district to do it in, because the school district that I did choose to do it in was a little bit stricter than I really thought, because I didn't think it was very hard for me to be able to do this there, and unfortunately it was like the only time I had, so I kind of was like, you got to do it. So I don't know, maybe looking into different school districts and maybe spending a few days just going to school districts, because a lot of school districts do require that you get approval from the school district's office. So I think that's just something I have to look into as a student, is maybe a more willing school district or more willing campus to allow stuff like this to happen. That was number 6. So number 7, what did you learn during your read aloud to children? I think I learned the most, especially because this was a kindergarten class, that when reading, you see a lot of children have like a spark in their eye, because they get the ideas, they get the understanding of what's going on, and I just think it's awesome to see when the children finally understand something, because something so simple as a doctor's visit can be scary, like I've mentioned, for a lot of them, and I think we definitely changed that around for the children that I read to, because they seem to not be so scared. So I think reading to children is very important. A lot of them were very interested in the bigger and new vocabulary that I mentioned. A lot of them were probably more inspired to be a doctor, maybe. I think it was just very interesting to see that. And also in this book, it has a few like rhyming sections or words that like play on each other. So it definitely piqued their interest when I was saying them, especially when I said them with enthusiasm. Number 8. What did I learn about myself as a teacher? Good and the bad. I think just as a teacher, I need to slow down, take a breath, really be in the moment and not so worried like, oh, is the camera recording? Is it getting everything that I'm saying? Kind of a thing. And just letting myself be. Just letting myself be full out. Because that's one thing. I did also notice that during my read aloud, I would kind of maybe stumble on a word or something. Maybe it's a word I know how to say. It's just, it's bigger when you're going faster. You're just like, oh, I forgot pterodactyls. Like, all of a sudden, you're just kind of tongue twisted. And I think the slowing down and just saying everything confidently would definitely help. Besides that, I think that my story reading is pretty great and a lot of children enjoy it. And I had a lot of fun doing the read aloud, even though I had quite a bit of hiccups while doing it. But it was still fun. And like I said, I think I'm going to look for different school districts and see what their district office allows and principals of each campus allows. So that's something that I need to look into. All right, well, thank you so much. This was an awesome assignment, and I loved it because the sense of wonder about something so easy and so normal that every person has to do eventually was amazing to see in kindergarten space. All right, thank you. Have a great weekend.